You think you can report me and walk free? You think your little petition can erase 20 years of my authority? The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence found in a forest just before a storm breaks. Students who had been whispering a moment ago were now statues. Some stared at their desks as if the wood grain held the secret to survival. Others, like Mary James in the third row, gripped their pens so hard their knuckles turned white. In the center of this storm stood Daniel Okorie. He was a tall, lean young man with a face that usually wore a mask of thoughtful calm. Today, that calm was being tested by fire. His heart was a drum in his chest, thump, 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 so loud he was sure the girl sitting next to him could hear it. His palms were slick with sweat, but he refused to wipe them on his trousers. He refused to look down. Dr. Ajayi stepped off the podium. The click-clack of her heels approached him. Each step felt like a countdown. She stopped inches from his face. The smell of her expensive, cloying perfume, something floral and suffocating, filled his senses. "I will destroy your future," she said, her voice dropping to a low, guttural hiss that was far more terrifying than the screaming. "I will make sure you repeat this year. And if you dare to fight me again, I will make sure you repeat the next 10. I am the gatekeeper of this department, Daniel, and for you, the gate is locked." To understand why the room was so silent, one had to understand the Department of Sociology. At Kingsbridge, it was known as the Department of Tears. It wasn't that the sociology of religion or the complexities of urban development were impossible to grasp. It was the human gatekeeper. Dr. Veronica Ajayi wasn't just a lecturer, she was a sovereign state. As the head of department, she wielded the power of the script. In your final year, you had to pass research methods. There was no elective to swap it for, there was no other lecturer, there was only Dr. Ajayi. She had perfected the art of the academic trap. It started with the official handout. "My lectures are merely a guide," she would tell the class during the first week, her voice dripping with fake maternal concern. "The real knowledge, the knowledge required to pass, is in my private compiled notes. $50, cash only, no receipts." For a student like Mary James, $50 was the difference between eating 3 meals a day or 1. Mary was a single mother. She spent her night after lectures hawking second-hand clothes at the local market, her doctor sleeping on a mat behind her stall. When Dr. Ajayi announced the price of the handout, Mary had looked at her bank balance and cried. She had tried to borrow the notes from a friend to photocopy them. Dr. Ajayi had found out. She didn't just fail Mary, she humiliated her. "If you can't afford the materials for this course, perhaps you should go back to the village and farm," Ajayi had said in front of the entire 400-level class. "University is for those with the capacity, financial and mental." Mary had dropped out 3 weeks later. The department didn't miss her. In Dr. Ajayi's world, students were not people. They were customers at best and obstacles at worst. Then there was Ahmed Sadiq. Ahmed was the son of a retired teacher, a boy who lived for books. He had corrected Dr. Ajayi once, very politely, on a citation regarding Max Weber. The room went cold. For the rest of the semester, Ajayi made Ahmed her personal project. She would call him to the front to answer impossible questions. When he faltered, she would lead the class in mocking him. "Look at the professor. He knows Weber but can't even define a basic hypothesis." Ahmed, who was once the brightest spark in the library, stopped coming to class. He was seen sitting by the lagoon, staring at the water for hours. The Department of Tears had claimed another soul. Daniel Okorie had watched it all. He sat at the back, a ghost in the machine. He was the son of a carpenter and a nurse, raised on the philosophy that silence was a shield. He took meticulous notes. He bought the handout. His parents had sacrificed their savings for it, but he didn't just read it. He cross-referenced it with international journals. He realized quickly that Dr. Ajayi's official handout was a mess of plagiarized Wikipedia entries and outdated statistics from the 1980s. The first time he failed her mid-semester test, he knew it wasn't because of his brain. He had answered every question perfectly. When he went to her office to see his script, he saw the red ink bleeding across his paper. "Madam," he said, his voice level, "on page 4, the definition of qualitative sampling I provided is exactly what is in your handout." She hadn't even looked up from her lunch. "You missed the nuance, Daniel. You lack the sociological imagination. Now get out before I find more mistakes in your work." That was the moment the fear died and the resolve was born. Daniel began to document everything. He kept a small digital recorder in his pocket. He saved every receipt. He took photos of the notice board where she posted her mandatory book lists. He reached out to Mary James and Ahmed. He gathered their stories like stones for a sling. He wrote the petition, not out of anger, but out of a clinical necessity. It was 20 pages of evidence. He didn't send it to the dean. He knew the dean played golf with Dr. Ajayi's husband. Instead, he sent it to the National University Commission and copied the Vice-Chancellor's secret ombudsman office, a newly formed department that Ajayi hadn't yet learned how to bribe. The atmosphere began to shift when Dr. Salma Bello joined the faculty. She was a transfer, a word that usually meant someone had been pushed out of another school. But Dr. Salma didn't look like a cast-off. She was a woman of quiet, regal grace. She wore simple cotton gowns and spoke in a voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. She was assigned to teach ethics in social research, a course Dr. Ajayi usually ignored as fluff. In Dr. Salma's class, students were allowed to speak. They were allowed to disagree. The first time Daniel raised his hand to challenge a concept, he braced for the blow. "That's an interesting perspective, Daniel," Dr. Salma said, leaning against her desk. "Can you find a source to support that? I'd love to see the data." The class gasped. A lecturer was asking for a student's input. It was as if a window had been opened in a suffocating room. One rainy Tuesday, after the lecture hall had cleared, Daniel stayed behind. He felt the weight of the petition in his bag. He felt the impending doom of Dr. Ajayi's revenge. "Dr. Salma," he whispered. She looked up from her books, her eyes kind but sharp. "You look like a man carrying a mountain, Daniel. Would you like to set it down for a moment?" He told her. He told her about the handouts, the Department of Tears, and the fact that Dr. Ajayi had promised to ruin him. He showed her the petition. Dr. Salma read the first 5 pages in silence. The only sound was the rain drumming on the tin roof. When she looked up, her expression wasn't one of shock, it was one of recognition. "Dr. Ajayi thinks her PhD is a crown," Dr. Salma said softly. "She has forgotten it is actually a servant's apron. Daniel, if you go through with this, they will try to break you. Are you ready?" "I'm already broken, Ma," Daniel said. "I just want to make sure I'm the last one." The days following Dr. Ajayi's outburst in the lecture hall were a blur of psychological warfare. She didn't just target Daniel, she targeted anyone seen sticking to him. The department became a minefield. Dr. Ajayi used her power as HOD to move the research methods final exam forward by 2 weeks. It was a tactical strike designed to leave Daniel and his peers with no time to study the complex statistical models she had intentionally kept hidden until the last minute. "You want to play the hero?" she whispered to Daniel in the hallway one afternoon, her eyes darting around to ensure no witnesses were close. Heroes end up in the dirt. I've already spoken to the disciplinary committee. Your petition? It's being rebranded as academic harassment. By Friend Day, you won't just be a failure, you'll be an outcast. Daniel didn't respond. He simply touched the pocket of his shirt, where the small digital recorder sat, silent and hungry. That night, the students held a secret meeting in the back of the university library, tucked away in the oversized books section where the shelves were thick and the light was dim. Nearly 50 students showed up. "She's going to fail us all if we stand with Daniel," one student whispered, his voice trembling. "She's going to fail us anyway," Ahmed Sadiq countered, his voice stronger than it had been in months. He looked at Daniel. "What do we do?" "We don't lie. We just tell the truth. If they call you to testify, tell them the price of the handout. Tell them about the missed lectures. Tell them the truth, and the truth will do the heavy lifting." Friday arrived with a heavy gray sky. The disciplinary hearing was held in the Senate building, a structure of glass and marble that felt more like a fortress than an academic hall. The panel consisted of 5 people: the Dean of Social Sciences, 2 senior professors from the law faculty, a representative from the Vice Chancellor's office, and a student union observer. Dr. Ajayi arrived first. She was a vision of academic authority. She wore a deep crimson suit, the color of power, and carried a leather briefcase that looked like it contained the weight of the world. She smiled at the dean, a familiar, practiced smile. "This is a simple case of a disgruntled student," she began, her voice smooth and melodic, a stark contrast to the screaming banshee she had been in the lecture hall. "Daniel Okorie is brilliant, yes, but he is arrogant. When he couldn't handle the rigor of my course, he turned to fabrication. He has harassed me, threatened my position, and attempted to turn the student body against the administration." The dean nodded slowly. "And the petition he submitted? The claims about the handouts?" Ajayi laughed, a light dismissive sound. "Voluntary study guides, Dean. The students requested them. The money goes toward departmental research. It's all in the books." Then it was Daniel's turn. He walked in with Dr. Salma Bello. The room shifted. Dr. Salma wasn't just a transfer lecturer. As she stepped forward, the representative from the Vice Chancellor's office stood up in surprise. "Professor Bello?" the man asked. "I didn't know you were back in the country." Dr. Ajayi's smile faltered. "Professor?" Salma had introduced herself only as doctor. "I am here as a witness and an advocate," Salma said, her voice cutting through the room like a cool breeze. "I have observed a pattern of systemic abuse that transcends mere disgruntled students. With your permission, I would like to present the digital addendum to Mr. Okorie's petition." A projector was lowered. The room went dark. The first thing that filled the air was not an image, but a sound. It was the recording from the lecture hall. Dr. Ajayi's voice, raw and unfiltered, screaming about her PhD certificate and her vow to destroy Daniel's future. The dean's face turned from neutral to horrified. Next came the screenshots. Daniel had used his phone to capture the price list Dr. Ajayi had posted on a private WhatsApp group, where the cost of the handout doubled the week before exams. Then came the witness montage. One by one, videos of former students appeared. Mary James spoke from her market store, her voice breaking as she described being told to go back to the village. Ahmed Sadiq spoke about the suicidal thoughts that had plagued him after her public humiliations. But the final blow was the plagiarism report. Dr. Salma had run Ajayi's official handout through a high-end academic database. 84% of this material, Salma stated calmly, is lifted directly from a 2012 dissertation from the University of Ibadan. Dr. Ajayi didn't just extort these students, she sold them stolen property. The silence in the Senate building was different from the silence in the lecture hall. This was the silence of a collapsing empire. Dr. Ajayi stood up, her chair screeching against the marble. "This is a setup. You've conspired with them. Salma, you've always been jealous of my standing." "Standing?" Salma interrupted, her voice finally rising in volume. Veronica, you are standing on the necks of the people you are hired to lift up. That isn't standing. That's treading water.
The investigation took 3 weeks. In that time, Dr. Ajayi was placed on administrative leave. The Department of Tears began to breathe again. The findings were damning. The Departmental Research Fund, where the handout money supposedly went, was actually a private account tied to a shell company owned by Ajayi's sister-in-law. The university had no choice. To keep her would be to admit they had been complicit in a decade of extortion. She was stripped of her HOD status and issued a terminal suspension with a permanent mark on her academic record. On her final day, as she was clearing out her office, the door creaked open. It was Dr. Salma. The office was a graveyard of plaques and trophies. Ajayi was sitting on the floor, surrounded by shredded papers. Her power suit was wrinkled, her hair unkempt. "Why did you do it, Salma?" Ajayi asked, her voice a hollow shell. "We are of the same generation. We know how hard it was for women to get these positions. Why did you side with him?" Salma sat in the visitor's chair. "Because I remember what it was like to be him. I remember the lecturer who told me I was too pretty to be a sociologist. I remember the man who tried to fail me because I wouldn't go to dinner with him. I promised myself I would gain power so that I could protect students from people like me. You promised yourself you would gain power so that no one could ever hurt you again." Ajayi looked up, tears finally escaping her reddened eyes. "I became the monster I was running from." "Yes," Salma said softly. "But you are still a teacher, Veronica. You just forgot the most important lesson. The student is the point. The PhD is just the paper it's written on." Graduation day was a riot of color and music. Daniel Okorie stood in his gown, the fabric stiff and smelling of new polyester. He looked at the program. Daniel Okorie, Sociology, First Class Honors, recipient of the Vice Chancellor's Prize for Integrity. He saw Mary James in the crowd. She hadn't graduated yet. She was back in school, finishing her credits under Dr. Salma's mentorship. But she was there to cheer. He saw Ahmed, who was now the president of the Sociology Student Society. As the procession began, Daniel saw a figure standing near the back of the auditorium. It was Dr. Ajayi. She wasn't on the stage. She wasn't in her academic robes. She was wearing a simple dress, standing among the parents. She caught Daniel's eye. She didn't smile, and she didn't look away. She gave a small, solemn nod, a silent acknowledgement of the man who had stopped the cycle. Daniel nodded back. He realized then that the story wasn't just about a wicked lecturer getting caught. It was about the fact that power is a loan, not a gift. It has to be repaid every day with fairness, with empathy, and with truth. As he walked across the stage to shake the Vice-Chancellor's hand, the applause wasn't just for his grades, it was for the silence he had broken. The Department of Tears was gone. In its place, something new was growing. It was a place where a student could ask a question without fear, where a handout was just a piece of paper, and where the clicking of high heels was just the sound of a teacher coming to work. The truth had spoken, and finally, the university was listening. Thank you so much for listening to this journey of courage and justice. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What was the biggest lesson you took away from Daniel's stand? Have you ever had a similar experience with someone in power? Or do you know a story like this from your own school days? Share your experiences in the comments below and let me know what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.